I turned this boring animation that you're seeing here into a Netflix level cinematic visual. And today, you're gonna learn how to do the same, all inside of After Effects. You'll learn how to make this rocky floor, work with different camera angles, setting up multiple 3D lighting, and finishing it all up with some compositing magic. And it all started with this mood board for inspiration. I got all of these pictures from Pinterest, and seeing these inspired me to do what will eventually be the final result of this video. The 3D model I got from Sketchfab. I will link it for you in the description, but make sure that when you download it as a GLB format. Once you have the 3D model, just drag it into After Effects and drag it into your composition. Once you get this menu, just click Make Comp Size and then press OK. Let's go ahead and start making that rocky floor. So we're gonna head over to this new tool that's over here. And if you're not seeing this, you need to update to the newest After Effects. I am currently using the After Effects beta, but hold the click and look for the plane tool. And then from here, you can zoom out a little bit and just make a shape like this. This will look like a normal shape layer, but because it's 3D, we're gonna be able to make some really cool adjustments to it that we wouldn't be able to on the flat shape layer. The first thing we're gonna do, rotate this by 90 degrees and then just make it lower. Then go ahead and scale it way up. Now what we want to do is we want to replace the material for this plane mesh. So we're gonna head over to the material section over here, and you'll see there's no other options other than default. So you will need to click over here and get Substance Community Assets. This is going to give you access to a bunch of different textures and materials that you can use all within After Effects. So all I did here, I was search for rock. And then for the format, I just selected this one right here. This seems to be the one that's compatible. And then I went ahead and downloaded this one right here, which is just called Rock Surfaces with Water Cavities. Download the file. Once you've downloaded the file, you just want to drag it into After Effects. And now when you go to the materials, you'll see that it's available. So go ahead and select that. Let's mess around with a few parameters over here. So the first thing we want to do is just scale it way down. So we're going to do something about 14, 15, somewhere around there. You also want to mess with the width of this. So we're going to turn that down quite a bit, somewhere around there. And now we have a new option over here, which is the displacement options. This is available in the After Effects beta. We're going to turn that up to about 126. And then we want to bump up the subdivision as well. So I'm just going to do 1 for that. This is already looking pretty good, so we'll leave it at that. I'm going to bump up the scale a bit, not from the material assignment, but from the layer transform settings. So we're going to bring that up. That way the rocks are a little bigger. Perfect. You have just set up the scene. So now we're going to move on to 3D lighting. Go over to Layer, New, Light. And here we want to create a spotlight. And we're going to press OK. Working with 3D lighting can be a bit tricky, so we're going to switch over to a 2-view mode. So that way we can change this one around without messing our original composition. Now go ahead and move the light off to the side, to the right, and I'm holding Command at the same time as I'm moving it so that the point of interest stays the same. And then I'm going to move it up a bit. And then we can move it a bit far or closer, depending on what look you're looking for. Let's go ahead and bring up the intensity of this light by pressing T on our keyboard. And let's bring it up to about 175. Now we want to create a bit of contrast, so we're going to add another light, Layer, New, Light, and we're going to make this one red. This one we want to move it off to the left side, like this, so that it creates a bit of a rim light around the edges of the shield. We're going to move it a bit more so that it's not super obvious. We just want it to be, a little bit of a touch-up to the overall lighting we have. And we can either leave it as this, or we can bring it up a little bit so that we introduce a bit of red over to the environment, which will be great for contrast later on. So perfect, we have red lighting coming from the left, and then we have white lighting coming from the right side. But the overall environment feels way too dark. And so we're gonna create yet another light, and this time we're gonna make it an ambient light. We're gonna make it white, and we're gonna bring it down to about 25, 26%. Press OK, and even then it still feels kind of dark, so let's bring it up a little bit more. I think that should be good. Let's actually push back the first light that we made and just push it up until it's spaced like this. Again, while holding Command to keep the anchor point in place. We may end up adjusting the lighting as we go, but for now, I think this looks perfect. So let's move on to the 3D cameras. We're going to go to Layer, New, Camera. And here we're going to select a 50mm camera, press OK. And we basically want to create 3 different camera angles. So I'm going to go about 3 seconds in, and I'm going to press Command-Shift-D to cut the camera. This is now going to be our second angle. Let's move up to about 7 seconds. Same thing, Command-Shift-D. This is going to be our third angle. So let's go to the second angle right now. And we're just going to move the camera around. I'm holding Option on my keyboard and then pressing my mouse buttons to navigate the camera. We're just gonna move it to a place around here. I'm gonna bring up the guides to make sure that I am following the rule of thirds as best as possible. I think somewhere around there is great. Now let's go ahead and work on the third angle, which is gonna be this one. And this one's gonna be a close-up of the sword itself. And it's not gonna look super great because the lighting is facing the shield and not the sword. But we'll fix that later. So we wanna get a fairly close-up shot. Something like this I think would be great. Now you'll notice in our original composition for this shot, we didn't have the shield on there. In order to remove the shield, we are gonna use a little bit of Blender. This is completely optional, but I promise you it's super simple. I barely know how to use Blender, and all I know how to use it is for this one thing I'm about to show you. So once you open up Blender, we just wanna delete the cube by selecting and then pressing X on our keyboard and pressing delete. Then go ahead and drag in the 3D model and you're gonna get this menu here. I have no idea what any of this means. I just hit import and there it is. If you want to take a look at the textures, you can just click up here. But basically, we're going to be removing everything that's not the sword. So I just select it and then again, press X to delete. And then I select this over here, press X, delete. And now we have just the sword. Go to File, Export, and choose GITF right here. Go ahead and save it wherever you want. I'm going to save it in this folder and I'm just going to name it Master Sword. And then just export as GITF. So now we have two different 3D models. We're going to drag in the new one we just made. And what we're going to do is over here, when it goes into this third camera angle, I'm going to select the Hylian shield and I'm going to press Command-Shift-D to split it. And then while having the second one selected, right, for the third camera angle, I'm going to drag this over while holding Option on my keyboard. And see, now that replaced the model, but we still kept the shield that's over here. Now for the lighting, let me go back to a 2 view so I can take a better look. And let's select both of these spotlights. Command-Shift-D again to duplicate. And I'm gonna move it up and down just to keep it organized. So now all we wanna do here is move the camera so that it's facing this side of the sword. So I'm gonna go into a bit of a top view like this. Or you can just click over here and top. It's actually probably gonna be easier. And then move the light like this. So you see what happened is, as I moved it, I held Command to keep the anchor point in the same place. And now see that? We're on the opposite side. And now we're actually lighting the sword properly. This is before, this is after. And we can make some more adjustments if you'd like. So the red light, for example, I'm gonna move it a little closer. And I'm gonna move it a little bit more to the side. It's just a matter of moving it wherever you would prefer. I'm gonna go ahead and move it somewhere around here. Let's see. Yeah, there you go, something like this. So it creates a bit of a rim light around here. Might want to move it up to the side a little bit and then down. I don't want it to be too prevalent. I just want it to be fairly light. If what I'm doing seems kind of confusing, I'm trying to be as clear as possible here, but we do go a lot more in depth with this topic inside of my animation mastery program. It's going to be the first link in the description. It's going to show you how to work properly with 3D lighting and 3D objects, as well as a bunch of other things like texturing, compositing, and they all include project files that you'll be able to go into them so you can practice yourself. You can either click the first link in the description, or you can go ahead and scan this QR code that's right here. And I'll see you there. Right, so once we have the different camera angles, we want to turn on the depth of field. And I just pressed A twice to reveal this menu. Click this on, and then we want to bump up the near-far blurred level. Let's go back to a 2 view so we can see it from a different angle. I'm going to search from the top, and we want to make sure the focus distance is right on the shield itself. So that way it's in focus. You can zoom in over here to make sure. See, there you go. Now it's on the shield itself. So everything else will get blurry except for the shield itself and the general area around here. By the way, you'll probably want to do these depth of field effects before you go splitting the camera into 3, but that's all right. It's not a big deal. We can just go ahead and click on camera options, press Command-C to copy the settings, and then we can just select both of them and then paste. The only thing we need to adjust is the distance. So as you can see, this is incredibly blurry and not usable. So we're going to adjust the distance by quite a bit. Let's close the settings for this one and then focus on camera 2. Again, AA twice. The distance is going to go way down. And I'm holding shift to make sure the numbers go by quickly. And that's pretty on point. So now let's do camera 3. And that's really blurry. Let's make sure focus distance is close up to the sword. I'll do a custom view so I can see exactly. And let's see, I'm gonna focus distance. There you go. So we're gonna focus on this point over here. So that way, see, like this part is blurry, but this part is clear. So it creates a little bit of depth. For this second camera, I'm actually gonna bump up the near far blur level because I want this section over here to be blurry while this one is crispy clear. So we're gonna bump that way up. Let's try 4,500. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And that's pretty much all you need to do with the camera. The background itself is too dark, so let's add a solid layer, Command Y, and we'll just make it any color for now. Bring it all the way back. Let's apply a gradient ramp effect to this. And we're gonna swap the colors. We want it to go from dark to somewhat light. We're gonna bring this up, kind of like this, and bring this a little bit more up. And we're gonna bring this black color a little bit lighter. And then this, we're gonna make it darker. This just creates a little bit more depth in the atmosphere. So this is before, and this is after. Subtle things like that make a big difference. Right, so we got the lighting and we got the cameras. Now let's go ahead and focus on overlays and compositing. One of the first overlays we're gonna add is this volumetric light right here. Let's go ahead and drag it and make it into a screen blending mode. And let's go ahead and scale it up quite a bit. I'm gonna press W to rotate it around a little bit. And it is too sharp for my liking, so I apply a fast box blur effect. I'm gonna bring that up. Now, one thing I'm also gonna add is a curves effect, so we can adjust just how strong it is, because it is a little bit too strong. So maybe we can do something, let's bring the lows down a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. Let's make it a little bit blurrier. I think 64 should be fine. Let's bring this down just a tad more. One thing I like to do here is just duplicate this with Command D. And make this very, very blurry. This will fill the overall scene. But this one will lower the opacity by a lot. I'm talking about like 23, 25%. Very slight difference, but I personally like it. I'm also gonna be adding this particle overlay effect. This is so that the scene has a little bit more movement. Drag that in, make it into a screen blending mode. Command Option Shift H to fit it to the comp. And we're gonna make a few adjustments to fit the scene, right? Because the light that we are getting is blue. So we're actually gonna apply a tint effect. And let's go ahead and color pick this blue color. And that already looks pretty good, so I'm gonna leave it just like that. One thing, by the way, because the light that's coming from here is now blue, then we should change the overall lighting to be blue as well. So I'm actually gonna go back to our first spotlight over here, double click, and I'm just gonna color pick this color. And that is a little bit too dark, so let's go ahead and bring the brightness up to something like this. And it is too blue still, so let's bring the saturation down quite a bit. So this is what we had before, and then we just bring that tint of blue in there. Press OK. So that was the before, that was the after. Everything just kind of blends in better. I also have the stock footage from an experimental folder that I have, and I'm gonna go ahead and add it to this composition. So let's add that B-roll right there, and let me scale it up a bit so we don't show the mountains, we just show the sort of smokiness of it that's passing by like this. I'm gonna make it shorter like this. And let's apply a curves effect so that we can bring in a little bit more darkness around. So that way when we set up a blending mode, it'll be a little easier to work with. Now, instead of a blending mode, I'm actually going to apply an effect called unmult. And this works pretty similarly to the screen blending mode, but it keeps a little bit more detail. And I'm going to keep adjusting this until I get what I want. But we're going to be bringing this quite low because we want this effect to be very, very subtle. We also want to make it the same color. So let's go to the, let's see. We can, yeah, I guess we can copy this one and just paste it here. But we do need to make it a little brighter. So let's bring this up, just so it fits the scene a little bit better. Let's bring the curves up a little bit more, and this as well. Okay, there we go. It's starting to kind of take shape. So this is without it, and this is with. The particles are a little bit distracting. By the way, let's go ahead and rename it real quick. Let's tone down the opacity a little bit. Let's bring it to like 65. And then let's rename this to smoke, and then bring the opacity down a little bit to about 70%. We want it to be very subtle. For this first overlay over here, let me just rotate it a little bit more. And then let's scale it up. Okay, now we're about to do some magic because we're going to apply an adjustment layer with Command Option Y. And here we are going to apply a curves effect. And you're basically going to see how we're going to bring this whole scene together. So with the curves effect, we're going to bring the low ends a bit. And then we're going to bring up the high ends. You see how we've immediately transformed this scene. So this is the before and this is the after. And you can keep adjusting this how you like, but I think this looks pretty good. For the smoke, let's bring up the high ends a little bit more so that they're visible. And now that we have this first scene set up, let's go ahead and move on to the second camera angle. So here we're basically going to do the same thing, but we're going to change some of the overlays so that it looks a little bit different. So the solar lens flare that I did earlier, this is the one that fills up the overall scene. I'm going to move this up over here. And then for the particles and the first lens flares, we're actually going to press Command-Shift-D and we're going to delete this. And actually, we're going to do the same thing for the smoke layer, Command-Shift-D, but we're not going to delete this one. We're just going to move this one around a bit to something like this. This is the overlay I'm going to use now instead of the other lens flare that I had. Drag this to the scene. I'm going to make it a screen blending mode. And I'm going to press right click, transform, and I'm going to flip horizontally. We want the light source to be coming from the right. Then it's just a matter of adjusting it however you like. And I'm going to move this over here. We want the colors to be bluish as well. So we're going to look at the effects of the previous layers. I believe it was the smoke one. Yep. The tint effect, we're just going to press Command-C to copy it, and we're going to paste it onto this one. This fills up the scene way too much, so I'm actually going to do a mask. I'm going to press G on my keyboard, and I'm just going to mask around here. The reason I'm going to mask like this, by the way, is because I'm also going to be introducing a text right over here. So let's actually go ahead and do that. Created by Earth Animations. We'll make my name into, we'll do bold. And then this, created by, it's regular, that's fine, but we're going to decrease the size. And then, you already know, we're going to apply a deep glow, the most overused effect ever, but I mean, it's just really good. So we're going to leave that there. Right, so let's apply a feather effect to this light that we just made. Press F on your keyboard, and then bring that way, way, way up. I'm going to bring it to about 650 should be fine. Let me maybe move this around a little bit. And then for smoke number 2, let's actually bring up the low ends a bit. Let's bring that up over here, scale it up a bit. And then this light is a little bit too strong actually, because I just realized it's above the adjustment layer we just made, right? Let's name this curves adjustment layer. And then let's just name this second solar lens flare. And we'll bring it below the curves. And it's still a little bit too strong actually. So let's apply a curves effect. Whoops, not that one. This one over here. Let's just bring it down just slightly, not too much. Yeah, something like this should be fine. We can even split the adjustment layer, so that way we can make separate corrections over here. So maybe we want this to be a little bit darker. Bring the brightness up. Completely up to you. This is personal preference. For the particle effects, I'm going to be using this one instead of the first one that I used. This one has bigger particles, and it just creates a lot more of a contrast between the first scene and the second scene. Bring that in. Bring it below the adjustment layers, make it a screen blending mode. And we want to copy the effects. We already had it copied, so I just pasted it. And we want to find whatever the point is that we want to use. I actually want to use the very beginning of it. I like how it fills up this space on the right. So we're going to scale that up and maybe bring it like this. And now we can just rotate the shield. So let me actually Command-Shift-D over here for the shield. And that way we can just rotate it independently of the first scene. So see, we're going to rotate it on the Z-axis. So let's make a keyframe and go to the end and have it maybe facing us a little bit more, but not too much. And then let's go back to the beginning and let's see, let's push it back a little bit. Something like this. If you play it, by the way, and it's playing really slow, like you just want to see, hey, what does the rotation look like? You can always go to Draft 3D, and this is not going to allow you to see the blending mode. So just go ahead and solo the layer with the shield, or the 3D model. And there you go. You can see what the rotation looks like. It's very slow and cinematic, which is exactly what we're looking for. Beautiful. So let's go ahead and move on to camera number 3. So we're just going to drag our cursor over here, and you can see our text is already made. So Command-Shift-D and just move it over here. We can bring up our grids just to see where we're placing it. I'm going to place it somewhere around here. After Effects Tutorial. For this section, we can actually use the same overlays, but we're going to change them around a little bit. So for this particles layer over here, let's actually rename this to second particles. And I'm going to select both the particles and the second solar lens flares. I'm going to press Command-Shift-D. And again, I'm going to move it up and down like that just to kind of have it organized. And here, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna select both of them and press right click, transform, and flip horizontal. So now we're getting a different angle. Push these like that, forward, and then we can cut this so we have a different section of the particles. And let's move this over here. Maybe something like this. So it's shining from this side. We can probably do a fast box blur to introduce a little bit of variety. And we're just gonna blur this out a little bit. And let's go ahead and introduce another light here. So I'm gonna go down to my lights, which are over here. Again, you wanna try to be as organized as possible. You can see I'm able to find my lights very quickly because I have them in one space over here. So I'm actually going to, let's see, not this red one, this one then. So I'm gonna duplicate it and I'm gonna go into a 2 view so I can see where it is. And I'm just gonna move it around a bit to create a little bit more contrast on the sword. Let's bring this forward maybe a little bit. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring the anchor point for the light closer to the sword. So that way, when I move the light around while pressing Command, right, I can easily keep pointing at the sword because remember, we have a spotlight. To be fair, we can probably change this to a point light. So let's actually do that. Double click on this light. We'll make it a point light and we'll press OK. And now we can move this around and just move that light wherever we want. Let me look at the top view. And so if we look from the top, you can see that we have the camera over here, which means the front of the sword is this way. So we're gonna move the light like this and see that we're already creating some harsh edges on the sword. Let's go ahead back to a custom view so I can see where I'm at. And we're gonna move this like that. Okay, you can see we're pretty much in front of the sword, but I want it to be at a bit of an angle to create some sharp edges. Okay, see that? So if we take it off, this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. So he creates these little highlights on the sword. And you can go ahead and change the intensity if you don't want it to be too harsh. Let's say 83, 87%. So see, it just shines these edges of the sword. For this overlay, we can change the color a little bit. So it's a little bit closer to white, considering that for this sword section, we're using white 3D lights. So maybe something like this. Now all we want to do is we want to rotate the sword on its own axis, but it's not going to be possible because the axis that we have currently is based off of the whole model with the shield and everything. So here's what we're going to do instead. Let's go ahead and just take a look over here so we get a better angle. We're going to press Command Option Shift Y to create a null object. We're going to make it 3D and we're going to push it back so that it's onto the sword itself. So that should be good. And then looking back on it over here, we want to rotate it around. So we're going to rotate the C rotation. We're going to do -40. So see that? Now it's kind of angled up towards the sword. So now we're going to parent the sword to the null object. And so when we turn the null object around, not that one, not that one, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Sorry. So now when you rotate the null object on the green axis right here, see that? Now the sword rotates on its axis. From here on, it's very simple. It's all about keyframing the null object. So let's go ahead and hit R on our null object and set a keyframe for orientation. And we're going to move forward about 12 seconds in. Remember the green one? We're going to rotate it like that. And again, we want to go to draft just to take a look at the rotation to make sure it's to our liking. And let's hit play. Beautiful. That's perfect. That's slow, cinematic. It has weight to it. It looks great. And here as well, you can do the same thing with the adjustment layer. You can just split it and then make your own custom adjustments here. One last thing to do, by the way. So for the first camera, let's go ahead and set up a keyframe for point of interest and position. And then let's go forward and then just zoom into the camera so that you get that 3D depth effect. Now you'll notice that the distance is messed up now. So we're going to go back to 2 views. And let's take a look actually from the top and let's keyframe. Let's hit A twice and keyframe the focus distance. We're gonna bring this one to the first frame because that one's correct, right? You can see that it's crispy clear, but this one's the one that's messed up, right? Because when we move the camera forward, so does the focus distance. So you can just keyframe this back. And there you go. We can also add a rotation to this, by the way, so we can make it look a little more dramatic. So something like this. I hope that you learned a thing or two from this video. And by the way, I made another video where I actually did 3D animations with video game cases. It touches up on a lot of the techniques that I just showed you here. So click on this video right here, and I'll see you there.